Well, hello. I'm Nikki from Relationships Redefined. I am going to talk about the love languages. Now, we often talk to the people around us in our own love language because we assume that somebody that we chose as a partner or as somebody that we love has similarities to us, that we might actually want to talk to them in our love language. But the important part is that everyone might actually register differently. So it's important to know what your loved one's love language is so that you can adequately convey to them and kind of fill them up. If you were to analogy of a gas tank, right? You want to be able to recharge and fill somebody's love tank up. That's kind of what love languages are. It's an easy way, easy tool to kind of register a little bit more positivity in your relationship. The Love Languages was originally written by Gary Chapman in a book, and it's a very helpful read if you're willing to do it. It's quite short, actually, quite readable. However, if you're kind of sensitive to any religious undertones, you may actually want to skip it. But there is a quiz either at the end of the book or there is one online, which I will link here, that will give you a perspective of what your love language is and what is your loved one's love language, so that you can adequately convey to them and kind of fill them up. If you were to use an analogy of a gas tank, you want to be able to recharge and fill somebody's love tank up. So that's kind of what love languages are. It's an easy way, easy tool to kind of register a little bit more positivity in your relationship. Here we go. We're going to have a discussion of the love languages, what to do, what to avoid, and certain things to actually take into consideration if your loved one actually has that particular love language. Now, to start off, there are 5 love languages, and we all register off of all 5. But what's important is that the first 1 or 2 are probably our primary love language, and that's really what you want to pay attention to. So I want you just to think about that, and if you're doing the quiz or if you're talking to your loved one, how are you going to talk to them in their love language rather than your own? So the 5 love languages that we're going to look at today are quality time, acts of service, words of affirmation, gifts, and physical touch. Now, of course, again, we all register off of all 5 and they all feel good. They are such amazing tools to use in any way, shape, or form. But again, we also are very sensitive to 1 or 2 in particular that really, really affects us and kind of puts a zinger. So that's really the importance of what I want you to get today. So I want you to think about what you're getting from this point from a couples and sex therapist position. The first one that I wanted to go through is words of affirmation. So the words of affirmation that you want to consider are that words are more effective than action for this person. You probably hear from this person like how much they want to do for you or how much they appreciate you. You might actually hear I love you or I really like you more often than not. And in that case, it's probably an indicator that your loved one has words of affirmation as their love language. So what actually really takes shape for people with their love language as words of affirmation is that to give compliments and kind words, to always share with them, to verbally give them kind reminders of how much you really care for them. The things that you want to stray away from are insults. You want to stray away from sarcasm or passive-aggressive activity or verbiage. You don't want to be very demanding, and you don't want to say anything negative to them or derogatory. That's actually very hurtful for somebody that's words of affirmation because words are the key to their heart. But here's a tip for you. If your loved one actually has words of affirmation as their love language, go ahead and say something positive or the words of how express to them something that you appreciate about them. So one thing that I really appreciate about you in general or about you today is, that you really took the time to spend the day with me, or you took off, or you expressed yourself openly with me. And I really appreciate that. So that's kind of something that you would do for words of appreciation. Let's move on to number 2, shall we? Quality time. Now, quality time is somebody that really wants to schedule something with you and really have time that's separate They really want the one-on-one eye contact, the conversation. So things that will really gravitate towards somebody with quality time in their love language. So here's a tip for you. If your loved one has quality time in their love language, is set aside time. It's undivided attention. So the next time that you actually schedule something with them, or you hear of something that they want to do, plan a date around it. That is an amazing way to register with the person who wants quality time. But here's an even bigger tip for you if you have a loved one with quality time. Actually putting away the phone, technology, the computer, putting television down, and doing face-to-face interaction is a huge thing for people with quality time. Now here's what you don't want to do with quality time. You don't want to schedule something with them and make it very enticing, they get excited, and then accidentally cancel for whatever reason, but you want to try to avoid canceling with them. You want to, avoid ghosting people, again, for whatever reason. Hopefully, if they're your loved one, you're not going to ghost them. If you're postponing any activities that you have together, really taking the time to actually say, I'm sorry if this is happening. I really intended to spend the time with you. It's really important to me. And a failure to listen is actually very hurtful for somebody with quality time. They really just want your attention. So giving them the time and space, avoid of technology, is a huge thing for quality time. Check that out and try it with the person that you love that has quality time. All right, third one, we have gifts. Now, I don't want you to think of gifts as like a monetary, materialism factor. Gifts are something in a love language that is freely given, voluntarily given, that is devoid or not tied to any shape, size, or price. So it can go anywhere from free to, a more inclined gift that you're going to put more thought and more monetary investment into. That's fine. But as far as the person who's receiving it that has gifts as love language, everything kind of registers for them. So don't think that you actually have to go out and undo advances or purchases all the time. So the biggest thing with gifts is that it doesn't have to be attached to a particular occasion. So giving these gifts when you are arbitrarily, just for an arbitrary day, right? It's not for an occasion, it's not for a birthday, it's not for a holiday. You're actually just giving the time and the token of your love to the person that you love and adore. So an example can be you went to travel, and if you traveled outside of the country, packing or purchasing a small token just to say, I thought of you. You were in my thoughts while I was traveling, and this is something that I got for you. A free example of this is if you're taking a hike or you're on a beach and you happen to pick up a shell from the beach and say, I wanted to give this to you because it really reminded me of the time that we spent together. It was something that I cherished to do with you. Handwritten notes, which are very valuable to somebody with gifts. You can do SMS text messages, right? If you don't have time to write something, you can email them. Doing it from the heart, you can even send them a Hallmark card for no reason. And so they might receive it in the middle of the week and not anticipate actually receiving mail from you. It's a really cute idea for somebody that has gifts as their love language. So that's a tip for you. And if you don't have a recollection of like what things to give, just really take note over time. Like what is it that your partner or your loved one loves to do or loves to be around, or a little hobby that they might do, or if they say like, oh, I really like that, take a mental note. So the things that you do want to avoid with gifts is you don't want to forget important dates. This is important. Don't forget their birthday, please. Somebody that registers gifts as their love language. So I know that gifts can be given at any date for any reason, but you really especially don't want to forget really important dates, such as a birthday, such as anniversaries. And you really don't want to forego thinking of them when you're off somewhere, or if you're traveling to another country, or you're away for an extended period of time. So something small or something that's handwritten that can be easily conveyed is a beautiful thing to give to somebody with gifts as their love language. All right, guys, we're almost there. So now we're on acts of service. If your partner has love language as acts of service, you probably have noticed them asking like, hey, do you want help with that? Or can you help me with something? Or, what are you doing? Whatever you do that conveys how much you love them or how much you appreciate them or care for them is much more important to them than words. So be careful and be aware of the behavior that you have with your partner if they have acts of service as their love language. So the things that you want to look for with love language is that you're volunteering out of the goodness of your heart to help them with something that is causing them strain or that they have as a to-do list. Also, something to keep in mind is doing an action, helping them, but anything that conveys equality and partnership. We're in this together. I would love to help you. How can I help you? Right? A big tip for any of those with loved ones with acts of service is, what can I do to take something off of your plate right now? I know that you've been really stressed in the last couple of days, and I hate to see you like that. I'd really love to know what can be helpful. What can I do, or what don't have time to do for yourself that I can really take off for you? We could spend more time together. That is a huge thing with somebody with acts of service. It's their love language. But the things you want to avoid or the don'ts of acts of service, let's say, for example, your partner has given you something and said, hey, if you can help me with this, I'd really appreciate it because I haven't had time to do this. So they're asking you to do it probably within a certain timeline. So you want to be sure that it's not time sensitive. But if you haven't had time to fulfill their request yet, and they witness you actually helping or attending to another person, it's very painful for them. So you kind of don't want to ignore their needs and take care of another one's needs right in front of them. When you're asking for help, if you are asking for help from the person with the love language as acts of service, make sure it goes both ways. You don't want to have a unidirectional ask. So you want to ask them and volunteer and say, I would love to help you. Like, how do I help do all of the things, or how do I help to do things for you that would be helpful to you? What can I do of service for you today? It's a huge thing for acts of service and a big tip for you. You want to also do them within timely responses, and you want it to be positive. So you don't want it to be like, ugh, like that sounds so draining. No wonder you haven't been able to do it. So you really want to stay positive and say, yeah, I'd love to help you with that. Let me go ahead and do this first, and I'd love to help you with it if your plate seems a little full too. Taking the time to actually do something for them versus the words that you're expressing is really what this whole love language is about. On to the last but not the least. Of course, I left it for last, being the sex therapist that I am. Physical touch. Now, when we think of physical touch in the love language, I want you to be aware that this is within an appropriate time, an appropriate setting, and an appropriate manner. Asking your loved one, they're probably more naturally inclined to be more physical and affectionate with you anyway. Probably a good indicator that love language is physical touch, but you want to do it in a way that's loving. Giving them loving physical touch that's appropriate. The holding hands or giving a hug. You can kiss them, but you might want to be careful not to give too much PDA, like a full makeout session for 3 minutes out in public. It may not actually register them as refilling their love tank. Or a few things actually that you want to avoid and don't do when your loved one has physical touch as their love language is that you don't want to withhold any intimacy. You don't want to withhold any affection. You don't want to hold any sex or erotic play or flirtation from them. You certainly don't want to give it to other people in front of them if you are withholding from them. It's very painful. And the most painful is physical abuse or neglect for somebody that has physical touch as their love language. So we want to stray away from that. But the things that are really great to do, and a big tip, is to give them tender hugs, caresses. You can give them massages. You can give them hand, foot, shoulder massages, full body massages. But asking them, sometimes in certain contexts, you have to ask for the consent. So this also plays into affectionality, sensuality, sexuality, defining intimacy and bringing that forward. How do you bring that deliciousness back into the game? So when you're having intimate touch or caress or making love with your partner, also making sure that one, it's consensual and the pleasure is also received not only by you, but for the recipient of who is their love language, right? And make sure to check in with them and say, hey, does this feel good? Do you like this? Is this okay? Those are huge things, and a big tip for you if your loved one has physical touch as their love language. So even, if you're sitting next to them at an event, putting your hand on their knee or offering to hold hands in your lap is a great way to actually connect with them if physical touch is their love language. That's the 5 love languages. Pretty easy, right? Just remember, all 5 are positive. We all feel good off of all 5, but there are 1 or 2 ringers that really refill our love tank, and we reflective, and it really kind of resounds with us like, wow, that just feels so good for my partner. I'm Nikki from Relationships Redefined, where we help people make intimacy their reality. We offer a free 15-minute consultation, and if you have any questions on any of our services, please let us know. We look forward to giving you more tips on the way, and have a great day.